A lot has been made about the situation in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield now approaching the end of the deal and needing to get paid and whether or not Cleveland is going to want to do that.
Right.
And Phil Perry the other night raised the point on Comcast Sports Net. I'm sorry, NBC Sports Boston. of
wow,
Bill,
that's like old school.
I call it CSNNE.
It just pulls out of the recesses of the brain.
Yeah.
Phil was saying, could Bill Belichick, and I disagree with Phil for this reason. I don't think Bill's going to be around long enough to be doing things like this. But he thinks that Bill might go to a system where you use up a quarterback for 4 or 5 years and then you move on to the next one.
So there was always
you never do what Cleveland might bring themselves to do, which is bring back Baker Mayfield, to which I would say there is some merit to what Phil is saying because of this. And this is my take on this. If Bill Belichick is in Cleveland right now and he is coaching the Browns and he is running both the team and the front office and he has Baker Mayfield, would Bill sign Baker Mayfield if he were running the Browns right now? No. And I think that answer is no.
So this has come up before, like the idea that you would churn quarterbacks the way you churn other positions. And one of the reasons why it's come up is because it's not worth paying any quarterback. It's worth paying Mahomes. It's probably worth paying Josh Allen. The question always has been, what happens when you get to a situation where you have a Derek Carr or a Jimmy Garoppolo?
What do you do with 10 through 15?
Right, and the problem is the biggest problem is there's no B-level quarterback contract, right? It's either you pay them at the top of the market or you let them go. That's the way it's been with young guys over the last 10 years.
It's stupid.
There's no second level.
Dumb.
There's no second level. And it become, you know what it turns it into? It turns it into a yes or no question. And so like that's how the idea, like, could someone churn quarterbacks? That's how that's come up. So you look at like I remember the first team where like the idea was brought up was the Seahawks, because they were built in a way where they took advantage of they were like the first team that really took full advantage of having a quarterback on a rookie contract. So it came up when they had to pay the Shermans and the Wagners and the Earl Thomases and the Cam Chancellors, like, hey, could they go back in the draft and try to find another quarterback? Ultimately, they didn't wind up doing that. Why? Because it's really freaking hard to keep hitting on quarterbacks.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like, and that's, I think ultimately that's where, you know, if you're one of these teams and you've got a Jimmy Garoppolo or you've got a Derek Carr, that's how that happens, is like you get to, you have the idea in your head and it's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But then when it comes down to it and you got to make a decision, do I really trust that in maybe a 1-year window, I'm going to be able to find the right guy? So many different things have to happen right. In fact, like if you look at it, for the Patriots, those things didn't happen right in 2000. That's why that's why there was no young quarterback on the roster, because they were drafting too low and the talent pool really dropped off after the top 3. It was Burrow, Tua, and Justin Herbert. And after those 3, there was nobody. And it was just like, so you risk being in that sort of situation where you're not going to just get lucky and have somebody fall to you, or you know, things are going to happen in front of you. So many things have to happen to get that position right. That's the bottom line. And that's why I think most of these teams get cornered in these spots where they've got to overpay players or pay good quarterbacks like they're great quarterbacks.
But I don't think that Bill would pay Baker, and unless Mac Jones becomes a top 5 guy, I don't think he'd pay Mac Jones.
Would Bill pay Lamar if Bill was running the Ravens?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he would do that either.
Yeah,
you got to cut bait with that guy at the end of the year then.
So, you know what the variable is?
So wait a minute.
They won't, but
here's the variable.
Well, I mean, they go good.
The variable here, part of you know what's going to be interesting about this too from a Mac perspective is that by rule, you cannot extend him. Like I heard somebody earlier this week say you can go in early on him and you can't. Like it's against the rules. Like you cannot extend him until after his 3rd year, which means the first point that you can go in and extend Mac Jones would be 2024. Like what they did with Brady at first that set off the whole thing, they extended him after 2 years. So they were able to get him really cheap, which set the stage for a series of contract negotiations where they had the hammer on Brady. You're not going to be able to do that with Mac Jones, A, because he's a first-round pick, so he has more financial leverage, but B, because the rules don't allow it.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about that, right? You know where we're going to be in 2024?
Where are we going to be?
Maybe a $300 million salary cap. Because think about it. The new television deals kick into the equation in 2023, and then there's the gambling money. And the gambling money goes into the equation too. And so all this money, all these deals that they're doing with all of these casinos, those haven't been accounted for yet in the salary cap. Plus, at that point, we're going to be past COVID. We're going to be past like the COVID impact on the salary cap, right?
You hope. Yeah.
Well, I know, but I don't think I'm not saying we're going to be as past COVID as like all I'm saying is like that
In terms of how it affects the business of the NFL.
right? Because they've learned to manage it. So I think we're looking at like a $300 million salary cap. And at that point, like there are going to be, and at that point, the Jaguars are going to have to pay Trevor Lawrence. And so if the Jaguars turn around at that point, see a $300 million salary cap and pay Trevor Lawrence $65 million a year, you know what Mac Jones is going to be looking for? $65 million a year.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, there's like a lot of different there's a lot of different like implications that go into this, because I don't think like 5 years ago people would have said that there'd be a quarterback making $45 million a year. But here we are. Like Jimmy, when he signed his deal, whoa.
Yeah, what was that?
$27.5 million.
That was crazy.
Unbelievable.
What, it was from 135, right?
We now have 3 quarterbacks making over 40. and that is without material change to the television deals. So the cap, like that is without material change to the television deals. It's also without.
That's just the NFL doing well without that,
and it's without the gambling money.
There you go.
Wow.
That's a good one. No, the gambling money can't.
Moral of the story: Mac Jones, stay healthy until January of 2024, because you could wind up becoming wealthy beyond anyone's imagination.
Well, 2 things. Number one, all the gambling estimates have been low in terms of, what they're going to bring in for state revenue, what it's going to mean for this, every projection, it ends up being more than that. So whatever the NFL is counting on, I would expect it to be at least that much, if not more, in terms of what their gambling stream is going to bring in. And for the Patriots, I think it's all that much more important for Bill Belichick to like stick around and like try and get some of that back in terms of, what you had for years there with convincing guys. It's going to be a little bit here for the greater good. I don't think Bill's going anywhere.
Why would guys do that?
I don't, because they had such a record of success, and
Brady enabled that.
Right. One guy.
Brady enabled all of that.
Well, Bill needs to work that magic again,
and
at least through that first batch of contracts are going to be signed under the new money.
And you just went nuts paying guys who had no capital in your building. You went nuts paying Matthew Judon. I mean, and that affected like the Stephon Gilmore thing. Don't make any mistake about that. Like that affected the Stephon Gilmore thing when it's like, you won't give me a raise, and yet you're paying all these guys who haven't done anything for you. So, I mean, I think the idea, there are some things that they can recreate that have happened over the last 20 years. The idea that you're going to get away with paying guys less if you develop guys the way you did over the last 20 years, like, I don't know that it ever worked to that. I don't know that it ever like totally worked that way here anyway. But what you did have was the ability to tell guys coming in, you can't make more than Tom Brady. They don't have that anymore.